What is the easiest way to achieve some level of cinematic lighting? And when I say easiest, I mean that it can be achieved by a beginner. Any beginner, in fact. Someone who just picked up the camera and is learning lighting for the first time. Or someone like me that made it sound like I'm a beginner. I ain't a beginner, but I am primarily a director and editor, not a DP. Not someone who specializes in lighting. And let's face it, most YouTube videos are lighting breakdowns for people who are aspiring to be DPs. But what about people like me and you who just need a few beginner tricks to make even our small budget shoots look really good? Well, this video is for you. So when I discovered this, I started leaning into this method for about 60% of my videos, possibly 90% of my music videos. The answer is so simple, more people should be doing it, but they're not. And that is shooting at studios. I've been shooting at production studios now for years, sometimes for big artists with decent budgets, but most times for smaller artists with little to almost no budget. So in this video, I want to not only give you some examples of studios that can help you achieve a cinematic look when you don't have the money for your favorite DP, but I'll also give you an example of the first time I found myself in a bind and utilized the studio space to create one of my favorite music videos in that time. All right, so I don't know what city you're in, but regardless of where you are, New York, LA, Texas, Tennessee, these resources will still apply to you. But for the sake of the video, I'll be giving you examples for studios that are in Atlanta. So one studio that is a really great place to start is Studio Space Atlanta. I've shot most of my studio videos here, and not just me. Big creators like YC Imaging and Creative Ryan use this studio space on a regular basis as well. Huge artists like Usher and Young Thug have shot here, so it's really popular, but the pricing isn't that expensive. They have different parts that can fit about anyone's budget. And this is the most important part concerning studio spaces. They have the option of preset lighting. So as long as the budget is there, you can go in and utilize the lighting that they already have set up. And then since you didn't spend hours trying to build the lighting from the ground up, you can try to make tweaks and actually see what changes those tweaks are making. They even have preset stages built as well. Now, Studio Space Atlanta is a great studio, but there is a new studio I had the pleasure of using that I think is just as amazing. And that is the HBUC, or Historical Black University of Creatives. They have some really cool built stages and pre-built lighting packages, with one in particular that I really love. It's this mirror wall accented with LEDs. You can fully control the colors of these LEDs, fully control the colors of the lights. The last music video that I shot, I used this room and the shots came out pretty dope. Now, these are great studios, but I know most of you are not in Atlanta. Hey, don't trip. There's a really cool way that you can find studio spaces wherever you're located. But before I tell you about it, if you're enjoying this content and this kind of knowledge helps you, feel free to subscribe so I can keep this type of content coming. And hit that bell so you can stay notified and up to date. So I know most of you know that you can just do a simple Google search for production studios or film studios near you. But another cool site that you can use is Peerspace. Peerspace is a place where you can find a great production space or a location to shoot at in whatever city you're in. Now, I do have to warn you, Peerspace can give you some slightly more expensive options, but they will be super unique as well for sure. But most times, studio spaces like the ones I mentioned before will list on this site when they first start up. So you'll run into some expensive studios, but you'll also find some similar to Studio Space. But let's say you have a shoot where there's no money at all. There is another option. And that is find a large enclosed space like a warehouse or just a big room where you can control the lighting. Because at the end of the day, that's what these studios are. Huge spaces where we have no uncontrollable light spilling in. They have additional bells and whistles, yes, but you start there, you'll be surprised at what you can get with the lights that you have. But guess what? This is the perfect time to bring up the example shoot that I mentioned, because this video here was essentially shot in a big empty warehouse. Yes, it was a studio, but it was a newly open one that was still being worked on. So I didn't have the things that Studio Space Atlanta or the HBUC has, but it had what we needed to create some really cool looks. The shoot was for an artist that I work with a lot, Benji Da Vinci, featuring Mello. The song had a particular vibe to it, and we wanted to shoot a performance style video that featured multiple different looks. Now this shoot was the pivotal point for my strong belief in studios, because me and my DP John were really still beginners. We've both come a long way from them, but a lot of it started here with us just jumping in a studio with the lights that we owned and seeing what we could create and come up with. So we shot on my 6K with DZO zoom lenses, and for the first look we utilized the one light that the studio had, which was a spotlight in the ceiling. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but I do know it was an equivalent of a 300D with a spotlight mount. We just shot it straight down onto the artist and used the fog machine so you could see the beam of light. Then we took it to another level by adding splashes of color with an Aputure Nova 300. We hit the back wall with it and played with the different effects that the Nova has. Now, for the next look, we sat the artist down in a chair. We kept the spotlight but 86'd the Nova. Instead, we added a projector behind him to create some beams of light that would hit the lens and give us a cool look. So you see, the studio allowed us to just play around with the lighting until we got something that we liked. Turning off a light, adding a light, etc., vice versa. For the third look, we went a little different. The studio had this door prop that had light bulbs running along the edges of it. We went back to using the Nova. We brought back the Nova, setting it to red and splashing it on the wall. We then used the projector. Instead of putting it in the back, we put it in the front to project words onto the model's face. I got some pretty cool looks with that, but my favorite looks came from our final setup. And I feel like we didn't do anything super special. What we did is we pulled the car slightly under the spotlight and we changed the color of the Nova to a blue and just shot it straight into the car. We then brought in a second Nova that we set on the lightning flash effect. What really made this shot really pop though was John had the idea to poke a hole in a water bottle and sprinkle it onto the window while the artist performed. And that made it look really cool. Out of all this, the craziest thing about it all was that we shot all those scenes in just 4 hours. Which is another benefit of shooting in studio spaces. You can get a lot of looks in a little time. So start using studios because they can help you achieve some cool images. But what if you're in a different environment? What can you do then? What if you don't have a studio? I'm betting there's a video for you to watch.